Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're alive. Hopefully, you all can see and hear me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, please put a one in the live chat and then we can get going. But I want to thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully, we can get through this live stream relatively quickly. I think that we can. I hope that we can. We'll see what happens. And when I see some ones pop up in the live chat, then we can get started. Until then, Rick Timms the third, good to see you. Oh, all the ones came in just now, so no more shout outs. No more shout outs, no more shout outs. So today's show today's live stream is titled, if I remember what the title is correctly, Joe Biden's marijuana pardons has absolutely nothing to do with Black America or the war on drugs, despite the fact that many people would like to lead you to believe so. They'd like to lead you to believe so. Rick Timms the third, you're the only one that gets that shout out, brother. You're the only one that gets the shout out. So a lot of people would like to lead you to believe so, but that's not true. And I just stumbled across some information recently that pretty much proves that point. So then the question stands, who's really benefiting from these marijuana pardons, right? Who does really benefit if it's not benefiting Black Americans? So that's what we're going to get into. And I'm not going to tell you who it benefits. I'm just going to lay out the information for you. And you can make a decision for yourself. But I'm pretty sure you'll get it right off the bat. So before we get too deep into it, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button. And also be sure to share this video out. And if you're not part of Patreon, consider joining Patreon. It's only $3 a month. We have a lot of good things that are coming up on there. If you're not aware already, me and our good brother Rob from Blacklight Revelations, we have a podcast channel called Just Talking with TD and Rob. All the full episodes of those live streams that are 2 hours long go on to the Patreon after the live stream is over. Also, I'll be doing a lot more other exclusive content on Patreon as well. Currently, right now, the full Tavis Smiley interview is up on Patreon. So for those of you who have enjoyed the 2 clips that I've uploaded so far of my conversation with Tavis Smiley, the full interview is up on Patreon right now if you want an early look with additional commentary behind it. And the full interview will actually be available for everybody this Friday. But if you want to first look at it alongside, like I said, with the commentary, additional commentary behind, the behind the scenes situation and everything that transpired into me getting that interview, by all means, hit up Patreon. It's only $3 a month. And also, lastly, if you don't want to join Patreon, but you do want to, show a little support to the channel, you can do so via Cash App, as well as Super Chat. Now, let me do one last thing that I forgot to do, and then we can actually really get started, honestly, this time. This should take nothing more than a second. But let me know while I'm doing this real quickly, how you guys liking the Tavis Smiley interview clips that I've put up so far? What do you think about those clips that I put up so far? And are you anticipating the full interview being released this Friday? Give me just a second. I'd like to see your comments on that in the live chat. Did not get a live notification, Jenny Lame. I'm not surprised you didn't get a live notification. YouTube is always suspect, but recently, really as of yesterday, YouTube has been really being super suspect with sending out notifications. I noticed that this is a problem. This was specifically a problem yesterday with a lot of people's videos. But it is what it is. So we can get started. I see some people, Christopher Perkins said they're cool, TD. Okay, so I'm glad you're enjoying the Tavis Smiley interviews. And like I said, this Friday, the whole interview will be available to the public. So let's get into today's show. I have my notes. I don't know why I have so much notes in front of me, but we'll see what happens. So when it comes to the Biden administration, right, within the last 2 years, or, he's coming up on 2 years that he's been president, as it pertains to Black Americans, we all know Joe Biden has delivered nothing but symbolism for the most part. That's it. A lot of symbolic gestures. First black this, first black that, first black woman here, first black man there. Symbolic nonsense that doesn't really move the needle on anything concerning what needs to change in the black community. Now, outside of those things, outside of these symbolic gestures, Joe Biden has signed a few pieces of legislation, but realistically, those are nonsensical pieces of legislation as well. And we're going to go through them really quickly before we get into the main piece of legislation, which is the executive order that he signed to pardon thousands of people who have federal simple, I believe it's called simple possession marijuana charges. But let's pull some of this up really quickly, and then we're going to dive deep into this. So, as we all remember, as many of you remember, let me make this bigger so you all can see what's on the screen right now. Many of you remember this, right? Wasn't that long ago, back in March of this year, Joe Biden signed H.R. 55, which is known as the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. What this bill did was simply make it so that lynching was a federal hate crime. Nothing more, nothing less. I've heard some people talk about this bill and they speak on it as if it was some sort of an anti-black hate crime bill. That is not what this was in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It literally only made lynching a federal hate crime. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. That would be the equivalent of him signing another bill, I don't know, HR 60, the anti-slave trading bill. That's what this is the equivalent of. And then, we move forward to May, right? 2 months later, and Joe Biden signs an executive order called Executive Order on Advancing Effective Accountable Policing and Criminal Justice Practices to Enhance Public Trust and Public Safety. And with this bill, this was another nonsense executive order. The first one was not an executive order, but this one was. And this was a nonsense executive order, which was basically a knockoff version of I believe it's called George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that never passed Congress, right? So what was so disrespectful and nonsensical about this bill is really just how insulting it was to the intelligence of Black Americans across this country. Because this policing criminal justice reform executive order that Joe Biden signed, to which he had George Floyd's daughter come to the White House, and they made a big hoopla over it. It was crazy. As many of you know already, it only applied to federal law enforcement. Now, let's take a look at some of the federal law enforcement that, this bill applies to, because we all know, Black Americans have been having a tough time with the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshal Service, U.S. Park Police, and of course, the U.S. Secret Service. We all know, Black Americans, we've been struggling with all of the discrimination that we get and that we face when we deal with the U.S. Secret Service. So not the LAPD, not Chicago PD, not NYPD, not any PD in any major city. No, the U.S. Secret Service. But now we move forward to Joe Biden's announcement of the executive order to which he plans on pardoning thousands of convicts who have federal marijuana possession charges, right? Simple marijuana possession charges. And what I want to do very quickly is play a clip for you of what this is and what it's about. And then we're going to get back into the discussion. Just give it a second while it loads up. And if it takes too long, then we'll probably just skip over this part. It's going to take too long. I can see it already. So I'll read a little bit of this article and then we can move forward. So President Joe Biden on Thursday announced he's pardoning all Americans who've been convicted of simple marijuana possession under federal law, coming closer to keep a 2020 campaign promise to try to get the drug decriminalized a little more than a month before the midterm election. The executive action will benefit 6,500 people with federal convictions from 1992 to 2021, and thousands of others charged under the District of Columbia's criminal code, according to senior administration officials. I believe that's all I had marked out on here. But that's what this is in a nutshell, right? But what's even more interesting is this, and a lot of you have figured this out and come to the conclusion concerning this already. But what's even more interesting is this, right? According to the White House own website, there are no individuals currently in federal prison solely for simple possession of marijuana. No one is in jail right now as we speak for simple possession of marijuana. So if that's the case, then who does this help? If it's not freeing anybody from jail, then what's the point of all this? Well, like I said, as many would like for you to believe, because the midterms are coming up, at least the NAACP would like for you to believe, that this is something that's going to benefit Black people so much. As this post says here from NPR, Biden's pop pardon will help reverse war on drugs harm to Black people, advocates say. That's just simply a lie. And we're going to get into that shortly on why it's a lie. But we'll read a little bit of this first before we do so. President Biden announced this month an executive order to pardon federal simple marijuana possession charges for thousands of Americans. An important first step, advocates say, to reversing decades of uneven drug enforcement policy that has historically burdened Black communities. These are the long-term effects of the United States war on drugs pioneered by the administration of disgraced former President Richard Nixon, which purported to help rein in the interstate trade and use of illegal drugs. The war's ultimate outcome, however, was the over-policing of Black communities, leading to massive arrest rates for accused Black drug users. The failed policies on drug criminalization have ensured many on nonviolent ensnared many on nonviolent marijuana offenses, said Patrice Willoughby, Vice President of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the NAACP. So here's the NAACP tap dancing for the Democratic Party again in an attempt to get you to vote blue no matter who. We're almost done with this, then we're going to move on. And this has derailed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people for conduct which is legal and which is disproportionately applied to African American community. We've seen since the 1970s that marijuana policy has intentionally and malevolently constructed. This is where I need Rob to be with me to help me read. Rob, where are you at, brother? You're supposed to be on this live stream with me so you can help me read words that I can't read for myself. What's that? Malevolently. We're going to skip that. Constructed to target the African American community, Willoughby said. And too many people have been caught up as a result of that and have been denied jobs, opportunity, housing, and other benefits of this country because of the malevolent policy. That's the word. This is a step towards restorative justice, she said. So, once again, this executive order that Biden signed is supposed to be a step towards restorative justice for Black Americans, But is that true? Well, a lot of people kind of seem to think that way, and they reacted in that way as well. Killer Mike sure did. And I thought that was very surprising. What I'm going to show you, Killer Mike's responses to Joe Biden signing this executive order. And to be honest with you, it's not really surprising to me that he was jumping for joy and going Google for Cocoa Puffs. It just sounds better when you say that. You say, to my surprise, I wasn't really surprised. Honestly, I wasn't surprised at all. But to my surprise, Killer Mike was jumping for joy. And this is what he had to say, concerning this executive order that Joe Biden signed. So Killer Mike states this, right? Killer Mike says President Biden tweets, "First, I'm pardoning all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession. There are thousands of people who were previously convicted of simple possession, who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result. My pardon will remove this burden. Killer Mike says, good! Exclamation mark. Biden then states, second, I'm calling on governors to pardon simple state marijuana possession offenses, just as no one should be in federal prison solely for possession of marijuana. No one should be in local jail or state prison for that reason either. Killer Mike states, better, with what is that, 4 or 5 exclamation marks. And then President Biden says, third, we classify marijuana at the same level as heroin and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense. I'm asking, I think that's Secretary Becerra, I don't know, and the Attorney General to initiate the process of reviewing how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. And then Killer Mike responds to that, best, reschedule, legalize, allow the folks you are freeing into the business and ownership in the legal space. We will support you on this, Mr. President. Yes, we will support you on this and vote blue, no matter who. Now, here's my thing with specifically with Killer Mike and why I wanted to highlight that. But before I do so, Jenny Lamb, thank you very much with your super chat support. I appreciate that deeply. Jenny says support Rob and the necessary content. I appreciate you for supporting me and Rob for the content that we put out. It does take time to put this stuff together. So I appreciate the support that I get when I do get it for putting this type of stuff forth for you guys. And also Blacklight Revelations 2, I'm matching Jenny Lamb. Support the content. Thank you very much, Blacklight Revelations 2, Blacklight Revelations the second, who is also a channel member. So you're doubling down on the support. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much. Like I said, the support is definitely much needed. So I thank you. So I want to touch on Killer Mike for a second and why I'm highlighting him, right? He's not the only one that acts like this, but he's the example that I have. So it is what it is, I find it interesting that you have a lot of these kind of black celebrities like Killer Mike who like to position themselves and kind of posture themselves as not being vote blue no matter whoers, despite the fact that they are, And the reason I say that is this, and I'm also going to pull up another tweet of his as well. Hopefully I have it bookmarked, right? Had Donald Trump had signed this executive order, right? Killer Mike and many other Democrats or those on the left would have been quick to expose this for the foolishness that it is, the same way that I'm getting ready to do it right now. But because it's not Trump and it's not a Republican at all, they're holding this up as if this is some great victory for Black America and that we must get behind Donald Trump on this and vote blue no matter who this midterm. And I just find the hypocrisy in that to be astounding, because you saw that all throughout Trump's administration. When Barack Obama left office, he put a lot of things in order that was supposed to go to Hillary Clinton as an alley-oop, right? Because obviously everybody thought at the time that she was going to get into office and become president. So he put a lot of things in place that was essentially giving Hillary Clinton an easy alley-oop so that when she gets into office, she can say, hey, look at all this great stuff that I did for Black people. I did it for you. I did it for the Blacks, right? But unfortunately for them, Trump got into office. He caught the alley-oop, did a 360 windmill dunk, had his arm hanging all in the rim like Vince Carter. He caught that alley-oop. And anytime he attempted to bring up that he's doing something good for the Blacks, the Dems were right there. The left was right there to smack that down and say, hey, no, that's not true. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. This is nonsense, So I just find it interesting that, these people that are supposed to be vote blue no matter who is just don't hold that same energy all the way around for every president. You know what I mean? And then this one last tweet that I'm going to bring up by Killer Mike, and then I'm going to get off it because I'm not really trying to, beat up on Killer Mike like that. I don't dislike the guy. I don't dislike him. But I don't know. Just certain things just a little suspect. So I'm going to read this tweet that he had put out, and it just goes to show, like, brothers like him, they're vote blue no matter who is. They try to posture themselves as if they're not, but they are. His most recent tweet says this: "Don't waste your time being mad at a 2-year-old picture of me. You better get to door knocking and canvassing for your side. I have not publicly endorsed any candidate and will be keeping my vote a private matter. Twitter ain't real. So get your blank out and cast a vote." Twitter is real enough for you to, make a response to people, calling you out for some 2-year-old picture. It's real enough. Twitter isn't real, but it is real enough, But once again, this isn't so much about picking on Killer Mike, and then we're going to move on, as much as it is about like these guys who posture themselves as if they're not vote blue no matter who's. When you read the tweet here, I have not publicly endorsed any candidate. A lot of them try to fall on that. A lot of these black celebrities, vote blue no matter who, is try to fall on, well, I haven't publicly endorsed anybody. And then he goes on to say, I'm keeping my vote a private matter. A private matter for what? A private matter for what? And Maxwell Toys, I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maxwell Toys. Maxwell Toys says, matching Jenny Lamb and Blacklight Revelations, support the content. Thank you very much. Like I said, is deeply appreciated whenever I get support for the work that I do here on this channel. Thank you so much. But like I was saying about Killer Mike, and then we're going to move on. What's the point of keeping it a private matter? Now, we all know he's voting for Stacey Abrams. He's not voting for Kemp. He's voting for Stacey Abrams. But you say, you want to keep it a private matter because he doesn't want to vocally say or show that he votes for Stacey Abrams, because he wants to present himself as being somebody who's not a vote blue no matter whoer, right? That's the only reason for that. But if you are someone during the 2020 elections who are saying no tangibles, no vote, and I ask you, well, who did you vote for? And you say nobody because there were no tangibles. Okay. If you were spewing a lot of conservative talking points on your channel, if you're some sort of political person with a bunch of conservative talking points, and I ask you, who did you vote for in the election? I would expect you to say Donald Trump. What would be the problem? And the reverse as well for those on the left, right? I would expect you to say Joe Biden. So anybody that's telling you, well, I'm going to keep my vote private because that's a private matter, they're full of it. They're full of it. Brother, we all know that you're voting for Stacey Abrams, and it's cool. Just hold it. That's all. Just hold that. But that's enough about Killer Mike, because I want to move on from that, and let's get into what this is really all about. Because once again, this has nothing to do. It has zero to do. Joe Biden's marijuana charges, Joe Biden's executive order on pardoning simple possession marijuana Fed charges, right? It has nothing to do with black folks. It has nothing to do with us. And we're going to get into that right now. So let me pull this down and let me pull up a PDF file very quickly. And we're going to do a little bit of reading, and then we're going to get out of here afterwards. Okay. And I think we might even get out of here before an hour is done. So let me pull this PDF file for you guys really quick. And let's really dive into, like I said, once again, who is this benefiting as it pertains to Joe Biden's executive order that's going to pardon these marijuana charges, these Fed charges, right? So let's get into it. So it should be in front of your screen right now. Let me remove myself from the picture. And now, what am I reading from? Okay. Give me just a second. I have too many windows open. Okay. So this report right here comes from the United States Sentencing Commission. Okay. The United States Sentencing Commission. So this is official government report, as you can see here, United States Sentencing Commission with the the United States seal right there. Okay. And this report is titled, for those who would like to read this for themselves, Weighing the Charges, simple possession of drugs in the federal criminal justice system. Okay. So now let's scroll down and let's get into what is all of this? What is simple possession, right? How much time do you get for simple possession? Like, and just what's really going on out here. And by the time we get to the end of this documentation that I'm going to be reading from, you'll be shocked at who's actually going to jail for simple drug possession, simple marijuana drug possession. And you'll be surprised for why they're actually going to jail for it as well. And then we'll find out who's actually benefiting the most from this, right? So let's get into it. Introduction. The simple possession of legal drugs is a criminal offense under federal law, and in many state jurisdictions, the offense occurs when someone has on his or her person or available for his or her use a small amount of an illegal substance for the purpose of consuming or using it, but without intent, the intent to sell or give, or but without the intent to sell or give it to anyone else. All right. Simple drug possession is a misdemeanor under federal law, which provides that an offender may be sentenced to a term of imprisonment of not more than 1 year, fine a minimum of $1,000 or both. The feds are not running down on anybody, right, who has a little bit of marijuana in their pocket just to give them, a year in jail tops and a $1,000 fine. All right. That's just not happening. It's not happening. So let's keep reading. All right. So we can find out a little bit more information about this. However, if an offender is convicted of simple possession after a drug However, if an offender is convicted of simple possession after a prior drug-related offense has become final, the offender can be charged with a felony simple possession offense. So what does that mean? More than likely, in most situations, at least how it should work, right? If you're smuggling drugs and you get caught smuggling some drugs, right, but you got some weed in your pocket, right, they're not going to take that. They're going to take that weed that you have in your pocket, that's a small amount, and they're going to say, okay, you already got busted for this cocaine, right? Fed charges. You're going to do, 15 years in jail. But because you got a little bit of weed in your pocket, sure, you weren't planning on selling this. You're planning on smoking it. But that simple possession is now a simple possession, felony simple possession charge, in which you're going to get a lot more than 1 year added onto your sentence and more than $1,000 fine. So it's just a ticky-tack charge to put on you, just to add more years to your sentence and to add more money to your fine. That's really what that is in a nutshell. Because when it comes to misdemeanor charges, it's just, you'll see. Let's read on. You'll see. Nobody's going to jail for the misdemeanor felony charges. That's just not happening, right? But let's carry on. The number of you guys don't need to look at me. There we go. Okay, let's just carry on. I'm insecure like that. I don't want you guys looking at my hairline when I'm looking down trying to read. You know what I'm saying? My hairline's kind of going back a little bit. The corners are getting faded. That's part of life, I guess. The number of federal offenders whose most serious offense was simple drug possession increased nearly 400% during the 6-year period between fiscal years 2008 and 2013. A charge of this magnitude over a relatively short period of time triggered further investigation into these cases using data on offender and offense characteristics routinely collected by the United States Sentencing Commission, as well as additional data collected specifically for this project. At first, this dramatic increase in the number of offenders sentenced for the simple possession of drugs seems to suggest a substantially increased focus on this offense by federal law enforcement personnel. Further analysis, however, does not support such a conclusion. Now, here's the important part. As you all know, whenever I got something highlighted in, a little baby blue or something like that, that's the important stuff. You're going to see a lot of that in this documentation. A closer inspection of the data demonstrates that this increase is almost entirely attributed to a single drug type, marijuana, and to offenders who were arrested or near the US-Mexico border, a group almost entirely composed of offenders from the District of Arizona. Okay? So all this stuff is happening at the US-Mexico border. For simple possession of marijuana, offenders arrested at locations other than the US-Mexico border, the median quantity of marijuana involved in the offense was 5.2 grams, 0.2 ounces. Okay, not even an ounce of weed for those who were caught away from the border, who weren't caught by the border, had nothing to do with the border. Okay, here's the important part again. In contrast, the offense conduct of simple possession of marijuana offenders arrested at the border involved a medium quantity of 22,000 grams. That's 48.5 pounds or 776 ounces, a quantity that appears in excess of personal use and quantity. All right? I'm going to say that one more time. I'm just going to read that last part. All right? For those who get caught at the border, the median quantity that they get caught with is 48.5 pounds of marijuana. So we're talking about drug smugglers. All right? That's what's happening. Okay? Now let's carry on. Recent trend in numbers for simple possession offenders. Between fiscal years 2008 and 2013, the number of federal drug trafficking offenders declined 7.7%, from 24,080 in 2008 to 22,215 in 2013. In contrast, the number of federal simple possession offenders increased substantially over the same period of time. In fiscal year 2008, there were 467 simple possession offenders. However, by fiscal year 2013, that number increased 396.6% to 2,319 federal simple possession offenders. This analysis will look more closely at these offenders, including an examination of the location where the offender was apprehended and how the offender came to the attention of law enforcement. And before we carry on, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button. Hit the like button so that this stream could get out there. And also make sure you share this on your social media as well. You're just not going to get this kind of information with Roland Martin. You're not going to get it with Tiffany Cross. You're not going to get it with Simone Sanders' show. Does her show even still come on? Did it get canceled yet? I know she was struggling with the ratings a little bit. I don't know. But you're not getting it with any of them. MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CNN. So share this out to the people that need to hear this so they're not being duped by President Biden once again, right? Because the lies are insane. The more we get into this, the more ridiculous it's going to get. And also, show your support for the channel if you haven't already. You can do so either via Super Chat or you can do so via CashApp, $tdhiphop. Or the best way you can do it is through joining Patreon for only $3 a month. And there's a lot of special things going on Patreon as well. So now let's get back into this documentation. Okay. Okay. So let's scroll down a bit. And once again, I advise you to read this for yourself also. There's a lot of interesting information here. Where marijuana simple possession offenders were apprehended. A document review of the marijuana simple possession offenders with sufficient information to determine the circumstances of their offense indicated that most were arrested near the US-Mexico border. Of the 2,149 marijuana simple possession offenders, the vast majority, 91.5%, were arrested at or near the border. Say it again, okay? Of the 2,141 marijuana simple possession offenders, the vast majority, 91.5%, were arrested at or near that border. The second most frequent location of arrest was at military bases, 3.6%, though clearly to a substantially less extent than at the border. National parks accounted for 2.8% of the arrests, and the remaining four locations identified in the coding accounted for less than 1% each. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, they have the data laid out for you. We don't have to go over all of this, but as you can see, 91.5% of the simple possession charges happen at the U.S.-Mexico border. Okay, now let's carry on. Offender characteristics. And if you don't mind, I just want to take a moment to take a sip of this coconut water. My voice is getting a little hoarse or parch. Is that the word? Parch? That makes me sound fancy. My voice is getting a little parch. Okay, I feel a lot better now. So, and step your game up, everybody. Drink some coconut water. Don't just drink regular water. Y'all not healthy like me. You got to drink coconut water. But anyways, excuse me. Let's get back into this. Offender characteristics. Y'all not up on that coconut water. There were clear differences between border and non-border offenders with respect to gender and citizenship. Nearly all border offenders were male, 91.4%, while non-border offenders have a much greater proportion of females. Non-border, 22.9% female, border, 8.6% female. I read that all backwards, but you get it. Let's carry on. A substantial difference was seen in the citizenship status of border and non-border offenders. Among border offenders, 94.3% are not U.S. citizens. This sharply contrasts with non-border offenders, 83.5% of whom are U.S. citizens. Oh, this is a good part right here. Lord have mercy. Okay, I remember this one. This is foolishness, but here we go. Unfortunately, it is impossible to examine the racial, ethnic makeup of border offenders because this information was missing for all but 11 of the 1,967 border offenders. Okay. That's, let's read that one more time. I'm going to read that maybe two more times because it's just nonsense, right? And this faces what's very deserving while reading this one more time. Unfortunately, it is impossible to examine the racial and ethnic makeup of border offenders because this information was missing for all but 11 of the 1,967 border offenders. Can somebody please say stop the cap? Can I get a stop the cap in the comment section? Please stop the cap. All right. We all know the racial and ethnic makeup of those who are getting caught at the border. Stop the cap. All right. Now, data for non-border offenders was more complete, permitting a race and ethnicity analysis. Among non-border offenders, almost half are white, 49.3%. So based off of what I just read to you, right? And the little data table that you see right here, it's more than obvious who this benefits. Even though they're capping hard in this report, we all know that 91.5% of offenders are Hispanic. I mean, that's come on. Now, if you want to play the game of technically everybody crossing the border isn't Hispanic, that's fine, So we'll drop it to, I don't know, 89%. Okay? So 89% are Hispanic. And then when you're talking about non-border offenders, half, 49.3% are white. Okay? Only 25.4% of them are black. So Black people aren't even in the equation here, realistically, when it comes to those who have been caught on simple marijuana possession, the Fed charge version, at least, right? Black people have nothing to do with that. We're not in the equation. This is largely, predominantly, 91.5% a Hispanic issue, and not just Hispanic issue, but an undocumented immigrant issue, right? Those who are crossing the border illegally, it's their issue. So this helps them largely, 91.5% to be exact. And when it comes to non-border offenders, half are white. So this helps Hispanics, it helps white people, then Black people. But, you know, as you can see, or as I showed to you earlier, if you leave it up to the NAACP, right? And if you leave it up to Killer Mike, oh, this is something that's largely affecting, it's just Black folks, So we got to get out there and show that support to Joe Biden. We got to get behind the president on this one, said Killer Mike. Let's carry on, okay? And please make sure you hit the like button if you have not already. Please, 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 please hit the like button and share this video out. Means of apprehension. Almost all border offenders were discovered because they were detained during border enforcement activities, 96%. All right. Let's keep scrolling down a little bit more. Sentencing. Let's get into the sentencing because I think this is where things get really interesting. Let me see. Is this yeah. Okay. So now we're in the sentencing portion. And this is where things get interesting because here is where we're going to find out what this report is talking about when they're saying that there was a sharp rise, in simple marijuana possession charges, where that was the primary charge, right? And we all know kind of common sense would tell you like, man, nobody's like going to jail for we've never seen this. When in life have you ever heard of the feds running down on anybody with a little bit of weed in their pocket and then hitting them with a felony, with a misdemeanor simple possession charge, where they're going to get like $1,000 fine and up to a year in jail? This just doesn't happen, right? So then how is this happening? How is all this coming about? Well, we're going to find out right now in the sentencing. There are stark differences between border and non-border offenders in sentencing factors and sentencing outcomes. Nearly all border offenders had little or no prior criminal history and were placed in criminal history category and were placed in criminal history category CHC. Far fewer non-border offenders were in CHC. I'm going to read that sentence one more time. I feel like I chopped it up too much. Nearly all border offenders had little or no prior criminal history and were placed in criminal history category CHC, 99.3%. Far fewer non-border offenders were in CHC, 64.4%, right? Okay, now let me keep scrolling. The median sentence for border offenders was 6 months, and almost all received a sentence of imprisonment, 97.9%. I'm going to read that one more time. The median sentence for border offenders was 6 months, and almost all received a sentence of imprisonment, 97.9%. Non-border offenders received a prison sentence less frequently. Only 26.4% of non-border offenders received a prison sentence, while most of the offenders received a sentence of probation only, 57.7%, or a sentence of a fine only, 12.6%. So the overwhelming majority, right? The overwhelming majority of non-border offenders did not get prison time, but the majority of border offenders did get prison time. Why is that? Well, let's find out. I'll show you right now. Now, border and non-border offenders differed sharply in the amount of marijuana involved in simple possession offenses. Non-border offenders generally were found with only a small amount of marijuana. The median weight of marijuana among non-border offenders, as we went over earlier, was 5.2 grams, 0.2 ounces. In contrast, the median weight of the marijuana found among border offenders was 22,000 grams. That's 48.5 pounds or 776 ounces. Okay? Now let's get to the summary. And let's round this all up, and then we can get out of here, and you all can go on about your day. Almost all, 91.5% of this large and growing number of federal simple possession of marijuana offenders sentenced in the fiscal year 2013 were apprehended at or near the U.S.-Mexico border. Offenders apprehended at the border and those apprehended away from the border differ in important ways. Among offenders with a known means of apprehension, the simple possession of marijuana offenders apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border were nearly all apprehended due to border enforcement activities, 96%, or very near the border, 4%. In contrast, simple possession of marijuana offenders arrested away from the border were apprehended at a variety of locations, most with exclusive federal jurisdiction, such as military bases, 34.9%, or national parks, 33%. Okay, so the majority of non-border offenders, we're brothers and sisters, and when I say brothers and sisters, I don't mean just black folks. I'm just talking about people in general in the military. I can only imagine it's probably stressful being in the military. They got to do a little something to unwind. They got caught. Now they got hit with a simple possession charge, right? The majority of the non-border offenders, almost 70%, were identified because of non-drug related events. 26.6 because of non-drug related investigation, 23.9 as a result of a traffic stop, and 19.3 at checkpoints, primarily at military bases. Okay, here's the important part. Most offenders, 97.9%, apprehended at or near the U.S.-Mexico border received a prison sentence, compared to 26.4% of offenders apprehended away from the borders. Well, why is that? And here is the conclusion. We're going to find that out right now. Perhaps the most important difference between the two groups is the quantity of drugs involved in the offense. Offenders apprehended at or near the U.S.-Mexico border were arrested with a substantially greater amount of marijuana than non-border offenders, 48.5 pounds compared to 5.2 grams, an amount that does not appear to correspond to the Office of National Drug Control Policy definition of simple possession of drugs. This difference in quantity suggests that a sizable increase of simple possession cases in recent years is the result of marijuana drug trafficking cases in which the offender was sentenced only for a possession offense. I'm going to read that one more time. The difference in quantity suggests that the sizable increase in simple possession cases in recent years is the result of marijuana drug trafficking cases in which the offender was sentenced only for a possession offense, right? I would read that one more time, but I'll just put the camera on me and say it in even more plainer English, right? These dudes were smuggling drugs across the border, getting caught. And when the feds would catch them, instead of hitting them with actual Fed charges concerning drug smuggling, they dropped it down to simple possession marijuana and only got 6 months in jail. How insulting is all that? When you go back to talking about things like the war on drugs, how many Black Americans, particularly Black men, were given football numbers for some of the smallest amount of drugs? 30, 40, 50 years for the smallest amounts, right? Till this day, too. Till this day. depending on what state you live in. Yet the feds are sitting here catching undocumented immigrants crossing the border illegally, smuggling on average 48.5 pounds of marijuana. And when they do that and get caught, they don't give them a trafficking fed charge, right? They don't look at them as any type of cartel or anything like that. No, they instantly turn into a slap on the wrist and give them a simple possession charge. Not even a felony one, because to get the felony simple possession charge, you have had to have already been charged with a more major drug trafficking crime. But that doesn't happen. They never get charged. They get off by having their charges drop down to what should be a drug smuggling fed charge to a misdemeanor simple possession fed charge. That gives you a year tops in jail and $1,000 fine. And we all know those $1,000 fines most likely weren't getting paid, right? You're talking about undocumented immigrants. I mean, well, they're undocumented. After they do their 6 months and they get out, that's it. So how you gonna track them down to get your $1,000? That's amazing, you know, and that's your government for you, you know. And instead of telling you the truth behind that and truly bending over backwards to correct this, instead, the Biden administration elects or chooses to slap you in the face, right, by proposing this executive order to Black Americans as if this has anything to do with you, as if this is for you, with the intended purpose of getting you to go out and vote in the midterms this November and vote blue no matter who. It's insulting. It's insulting. But, you know, we seem to fall for it every time. And it's unfortunate. But hopefully that'll come to an end within the near future. And it could definitely come to an end, shameless plug, if you share my videos. It could come to an end a lot quicker. Because like I said earlier, Roland Martin's not going to talk about this. Tiffany Cross is not going to talk about this. Simone Sanders is not going to talk about this. Don Lemon's not going to talk about this. I don't even think Don Lemon's on TV anymore. Hold on just a second. Had to shut the door real quick. I don't think Don Lemon's on TV anymore. Didn't he get fired from CNN, something like that? He's not going to talk about this. You're only going to get that here. tdhiphop Media. So make sure you share this video out with your family and friends. Share this out with all your vote blue no matter who friends. Or at least give them the brief summary of what we've talked about here. And if they want to know more, then share this out with them as well. All right. So with all that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I feel like today was a very productive live stream. Got a lot of good information out there. And hopefully it'll make some sort of a difference to just kind of correct the minds of our people who are just stuck on silly with this vote blue no matter who stuff, you know, where they constantly find themselves in a position of being taken advantage of, you know, and being tricked and duped into voting for essentially our own destruction. So with all that being said, that does it for today's video. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button to give you notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. Please make sure you text the number please make sure you text TD Hip Hop to number 33222. That's TD Hip Hop to number 33222. That will get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video. But it also serves as a insurance plan for myself. So in case social media, I guess social media too. But in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe, I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you join the emailing list. The link to that will be in the description box below, and I'll have it pinned in the comment section below once this live stream is over. And last but certainly not least, consider joining Patreon for only $3 a month, right? Joining Patreon for $3 a month will help put me in position to be able to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Because remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And like I said, over the past, few months, a lot's been going on Patreon. Like I said, the full episodes of Just Talking with TD and Rob are on Patreon. You cannot find them on the YouTube channel. They're not there. The full 2 hours are on Patreon. If you want an exclusive first look at the Tavis Smiley interview, and it's an hour long, that's on Patreon as well. And channel members have access to all these perks as well. So you can also be a channel member for $3 a month also. And a lot more is coming in terms of exclusive content and exclusive live streams for Patreon and channel members also. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for your time. And until the next video, peace.